We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Central Texas. Actually, it's not really morning, it's noon, it's officially afternoon. How is everybody today? It's been a pretty intense weekend on lots of fronts. Personally and otherwise, as always, there's never a dull moment in the collapsing world known as the Matrix that we're all now participating in. And many people are still really in the aftermath of the Boston Marathon experience. Young Dzhokhar Sarayev is now under the watchful care of Israeli doctors who have removed his larynx. Because apparently something had happened to him once he was pulled out of that boat that he was hiding in. Apparently, he was either shot or stabbed. There was some damage that was done to his larynx. He can't talk now. He can't talk now. Okay, so let's just wrap our heads around this for a moment. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's just lost his brother. His brother is probably the world in because his parents weren't here. They were in Chechnya. He goes through this crazy, and I mean crazy scene where he's being hunted down like a most dangerous game. He's found, and now he has no voice. He can't talk. But just put yourself inside his head, in his body for a moment, and let's just say he's actually real. Let's say he's a real kid. That this all happened. Just put yourself inside that body for a moment. What does that feel like? What would that feel like to you? Your world is out of control, and all of a sudden you can't talk about it. You have to write things down. You have to write things down in order to communicate. How much trust do we have that whatever the kid is communicating is actually going to be what he says? He could have a written confession. He could say one thing and they could totally change it. How convenient. How utterly convenient. You know, this whole thing stinks to high heaven. Now, Glenn Beck says that he's going to bust the president's chops unless he comes clean on this. Glenn Beck says he's got the goods. They call it going off the reservation, which is what Glenn Beck is supposedly about to do. Glenn Beck is an Aquarius, by the way. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the course of the next few hours. Will somebody talk to Glenn Beck and say, Glenn, you got to, cool your jets, buddy? Or will he actually do what he intends to do? And if he does, then what is the intention? Where is it going to go? Is he going to point to Mr. Saudi man that was pulled aside and then sent back to Saudi Arabia, probably first class, by the way, and probably at your expense as a taxpayer? Apparently the same Saudi national had met with Michelle Obama a week before. What the hell is going on with this world? One of the things that's come up recently as a result of this and a lot of other things happening is that people are reaching kind of a breaking point. They're reaching kind of a breaking point emotionally and psychologically. And the reason that that's happening is because people continue to undergo a mass trauma. They continue to be indoctrinated into these collective traumatizations, these collective trauma rituals. That's what's happening. And people have no context for any of this. None. I mean, you literally have to live in a place like Israel to kind of have any idea what this is like, because apparently this is fairly common there. So people have reached their breaking point in many ways. And the sad thing about all of this is, and if you go back and look at the timeline and some of the things that I've written about and will continue to write about as I work in my newsletter today, is that this event happened on Patriots Day, which is the 15th of April, aka Tax Day. Apparently it was also Israeli Independence Day. But if you go back to the 12th, April 12th, that's the start of the Civil War. April 12th is the start of the Civil War, 1861. That's when it all started. Just 3 days before what happened here, or what happened in Boston. And I would say that based on what I'm reading and even experiencing, we are being divided and conquered, or at least divided and trying to be conquered around this. And I'll give you an example that broke my heart last night. Absolutely broke my heart. I had found a piece of audio where a woman calls into a talk show and she says that she saw Tamerlan Tsarnaev being run over and then shot by the Boston police. And this was replayed on Alex Jones in the InfoWars show. And I put that up on my page. I didn't say anything. There are times where I'll insert myself into the narrative, and there are times when I don't. And they're generally conscious decisions. And that one, I just put it up there because I wanted to see how people would respond. And one of the responses I got was from somebody who was a friend and very instrumental in many ways, the development of my child. He was a retired police officer in Berkeley, knew him well. My kid went to his martial arts dojo from the age of really almost 3 to 7. I think probably 8, about 5 years. 5 years of my son's life, every single day, getting to know this guy, getting to know his wife. I'd been to his house for parties. I'd even done some work for him and helped him get new clients for the gym, for the dojo. And I put that up last night, and he jumped in on my post and he said, "You've got to be kidding me! Really? Are you serious?" And I said, "Listen, and decide for yourself." I mean, I have respect for the guy. I'm not going to jump down his throat and get on his case because I don't want to do that. I had a meaningful relationship with him. And then he said, "I'm not going to do that." I promptly defriended him. I didn't want to go through any kind of massaging or any kind of protocols around getting him to see things differently. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen, especially with somebody who has a very strong fraternal relationship with law enforcement. And this is something that people need to think about, because you may not understand that these cops and ex-cops are like centurions. They're a fraternity, and they will support one another. This was a really alarming realization on my part. I'm not saying that every police officer or ex-police officer is going to step in line and have the same point of view, but I'm going to go on record and say a lot of them will. There's just it's kind of like in pro sports. You get into pro football, and there's a fraternity in pro football. If one of your fellow pro footballers screws up, or gets an outrageously bad contract, good in his favor, bad for the team, thus jacking up salaries, even though player X or player Y looks at the other player and says, man, I can play 3 times as good as that dude. I need that money. They'll never say anything. They don't cross lines like that. There is a silent pact amongst football players, baseball players, basketball players. They don't turn on each other. These fraternal relationships are the glue that holds their collective identity together. And the fraternal relationship is based on some kind of fealty towards one another based on shared experience. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The problem is that in order for people to be able to think clearly and critically, they need to disabuse themselves and dissolve themselves of any kinds of relationships that are like that. Because if you don't, you're always going to be dominated by a form of groupthink. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Now what happens? If you as a person or an individual divest yourself of your relationship to some group because their mindset or their collective belief is influencing how you think, what do you become? You become a lone wolf. That's who you become. And the lone wolf is now the target in our society. That's what it's about. It's the lone wolf. It's the person that doesn't have the kinds of connections to groups or organizations. Why? Because people that are clear understand that they don't need those kinds of relationships. And now that doesn't mean you can't, like I help coach my son's Little League team. And I get swept up on it sometimes too. I mean, I lost a terrible game on Saturday. It was hard to watch, but at the end of the day, I pack up my gear and I go home. So it's not like I'm sitting up in my, third-story apartment fantasizing on Ted Kaczynski or anything like that. We need each other. We need friendships. We need relationships. It's unhealthy if we don't have them. What I am saying, though, is that for people to be able to think clearly, they need to disassemble their relationships to these collective thought forms that dominate how we think or how we feel. Because once we enter into them, we enter into all kinds of agreements. And we can't even question our own relationship to our perceptions or emotions. That's just the way it is. So the lone wolf is in the crosshairs right now. They keep talking about the lone wolf, the lone wolf, the lone wolf, the lone wolf, the lone wolf. You get enough lone wolves together, what do you get? You get a wolf pack. That's where it's at. I want to do a little business here, a little housekeeping, then we're going to get into this Boston Marathon thing a little bit more. Today is Dzhokhar Saryev's birthday. Can you believe that? April 22nd. Apparently, he has the same birthday as Adam Lanza. I posted that on Facebook. I erroneously posted it was the same day as the King David Hotel bombing. I'm wrong. That's July 22nd. I got my 22nds mixed up. There was a pivotal conflict in Haifa that took place on this day, but not the King David Hotel bombing. I stand corrected. Thank you, David Cook, for reminding me about that. But we're going to get into this a little bit more. But before we do, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. So one of the things that I do and provide for you who listen to the show, whether it's on a podcast or on a stream, is I provide you with 3 days of content, compelling content. If you look at my guests, I have essentially, but not always, guests that are similar to George Norrie, to Red Ice Radio, to Jeff Rentz, people like Jay Widener and Freeman, George Green. These people have been a part of my show. Not only that, but I attempt to find you new people like Tom Palladino and his Scalar Energy Healing. That's just on Fridays. 2 hours of interviews that you're not going to get the same interview with me, by the way, as you will with these other guys. And I'm not saying I'm better than they are. It's just going to be different. So it's 2 hours on Friday, 2 hours of astrology on Wednesday with free readings, by the way. And people come in and they've gotten free readings. I love doing it. It's my service to the world is the Wednesday show, if you really want to know the truth. And then Monday you get this. And what do we cover? We cover things that other people, or I cover things that other people don't want to talk about. That makes other people uncomfortable. I talk about things, I post things that alienate people like my friend, my ex-friend in Berkeley. And unlike Jeff Rentz, and unlike Red Ice Radio, and unlike even Norrie Coast to Coast, I don't charge you for the content. Okay, I don't. I've been doing this for 4 years now, and I have been doing it because I want to do it. I love to do it. I feel like it's my calling and my mission. I have some passion around it. I've been getting better at it as the years have gone on, and I thank you for allowing me to do that. I need your support, though. I'm putting it out there. If you listen to this program and you enjoy the content and you find it compelling, I need your support. I need your support financially. I have never been so clear in my life, because the area that I'm in now and what I'm talking about now is not only vital, but it's also edgy. Okay? So I am putting myself out there by going down this path and bringing this stuff up. And I need your support around that. And I'm being very clear, very blatant. If you want to, you can go to my website, robertphoenix.com, and you can donate. You can donate to support this show. I'm going to do a Kickstarter, and this thing's going to get up and running. It's going to be a different show in a couple months. Trust me on this. You're going to get 5 days a week. You can participate in the Kickstarter to make sure that you get the program and the content. Somebody's called on the 510. I wonder if this is my friend in Berkeley. Let's find out. Let's just see this. Hold on. Anyway, you're going to get the content. Clear. You're going to get it if you participate in the Kickstarter. Okay? Anyway, I'm just putting it out there now. It was weighing heavily on my mind this morning. And I heard the voice. Ask for support. RobertPhoenix.com. Donate what you can. Let's take this call from the 510, and then let's continue on with the show. Hello.
Hi, it's Camille.
Oh, hey, Camille. What's happening?
Oh, I'm just checking in about this Boston Marathon situation.
What is your what are your thoughts on it?
Wow. Could that get any creepier? I was not able to just sit and listen to everything, concentrating on a toddler and everything, but I was able to check in with some coverage Thursday evening into Monday morning. And I was so glued, it was like I had to wake up. I fell asleep listening to radio coverage. I had to wake up every hour to check in with it. It was like an ongoing soap opera.
Well, It still is. Soap opera, I think, would be calling it. That'd be light. That would be. It's more than a soap opera. I think it's more along the lines of a Dostoevsky or Shakespearean tragedy. To be honest with you, with a little bit of Orwell and Philip K. Dick thrown in. You know, Camille, I just want to say that yes, it started on Thursday. Really, Thursday night into Friday morning. By the way, I stayed up all night on Thursday into Friday morning. I witnessed the naked video, which is now starting to come to light. I talked about it on Friday's show. So this is another thing. I'm sorry. This is my Robert moment for the show, Camille. This is another thing that I did. I stayed up and I got as many facts. I saw as many things as I could to report back to you on Friday for a 2-hour show. So anyway, I feel clear now and got that out of the way. So thank you. And yeah, this is we are in uncharted territory right now, Camille.
We were in something, but you reminded me of something. Now, we don't have cable television anymore, so I am not looking at any live feeds, but whatever AM radio that I checked into on Friday morning, they were watching something about a naked guy, and then I didn't hear that broadcast anywhere else again. So I'm like, well, what happened to the naked guy?
So the naked guy, there are a number of scenarios now that have emerged around the naked guy. You can find the naked guy video on YouTube. Scenario number one is that it is Tamerlane Sarajev. That's one scenario, that they had him, they released him, and then they apparently killed him. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is that the naked guy was the driver of the car that supposedly Tamerlane and Jacquard hijacked, and they let him go after a half an hour of interrogation. Now, here's the problem with that scenario. Okay, the problem with that scenario is that if indeed it was the carjacker, why would you let him go? Okay, now listen to this now, because they were interrogating people who were quote unquote victims of the bombing in the hospital, saying that they were also potential suspects, and these people are theoretically hurt and wounded. Now, if that's the case, why would you not take naked guy downtown and not release him for another day just so you can pick his brain clean? And oh, by the way, naked guy could also ID Tamerlane Sarajev, who at that time they said was dead. Okay, so they're releasing naked guy and saying Tamerlane Sarajev is dead. If I am not, even though I watched a lot of police shows in the 1970s, I am not a forensics or police officer. However, I think it would be pretty much common protocol for you to take that person downtown based on the shows that I've seen, and then you bring them in, and then they pull the tray out, from the cooler, and they say, "Is this the guy?" They do it all the time. Right. Is this the guy? Yes, that's the guy. But they didn't. They let the car driver go. Oh, by the way, they said that the person who'd been carjacked said the two suspects looked them in the eye and told them, "We are the marathon bombers."
Oh yeah, I heard that.
So you've got so then you've got the guy on the ground. Now, is the guy on the ground the same guy as the naked guy? Is the guy on the ground Tamerlane Sarajev? I don't know. There's too many missing pieces around all of this, and there's plenty of really shocking evidence that appears to look like there is that the whole thing was staged. There may have been some people that were hurt, but the whole thing is staged. There's a guy who's an EMT who's done some really great photo work on one of the scenes where they're literally dealing with one of the amputees, and he breaks it down by frame by frame. And this is an EMT who knows about trauma and the type of blood and carnage that this type of trauma, which would be the explosion, the losing of a limb, would produce, which means there'd be blood spurting everywhere, right? But it's not. It's like the blood is dried, the bone is sticking out. So there's a lot happening here, and this guy actually breaks it down in a really clear and concise way. Let me see if I can give people the website here so they can figure this out. Hold on, it's in my inbox.
On your Facebook, I saw something, and I thought about adding the guy, but I didn't do it. But I saw some of those photos.
Let's just hold on a sec here. Let's see. We've got there we go. It's called Frame by Frame, and it's look up BULAHMAN, like bulaman.wordpress.com. I tried to put links in the chat room, but for some reason I can't put a link in the chat room for what I don't know why. I'll try it again. Maybe I'll try it again on a break here to see what happens. But this is a must look at, must see, frame by frame breakdown of what happened with the trauma and with the explosion, the flash pod explosion apparently at the event.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, I don't know what to say or what to think about any of this.
Well, here's where it gets, for me, there are two things that I feel are troubling. The first thing that I feel is troubling is the fracturing of the people in this country as a result of this. Because there are some people, for whatever reason, that don't want to entertain the fact that something really egregious and manipulated took place during this event. And then there's another faction of the country who all they want to do is get to the truth. And those people, I think, are being vilified, and they're being turned into social pariahs. And this to me, this is the greatest tragedy out of all this, because it's tearing our country in two.
Right.
And this goes back to the Civil War, and I've been talking about the Civil War on the show since the Super Bowl, where you have brother versus brother with the Harbaughs, and then a lot of other pieces going along with it. And I don't think there's any mistake that this event that took place on Monday chronologically took place just 3 days after the anniversary of the Civil War. By the way, I believe it's the 175th anniversary of the Civil War this year.
Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So that's the one thing that is troubling for me. The other thing that's troubling is that as we continue to piece these things together and try to figure out what's happening, you've got people like Beck and Jones, and whether they're gatekeepers or not, I mean, they're amassing evidence. They are waking some people up, and then people can try to figure out if, what they think the scenarios are or really what happened. But there's an awakening taking place. And the tricky part is that when they have an event like this, and there's obviously lots of, pieces that aren't fitting, then the challenge is, or the most dangerous aspect of this is something else coming along and taking place very quickly, so that people move their attention away from what's just happened. And that, to me, is the most troubling part of it all, because I would not be surprised if we see another event here in the next week or so. And it's unfortunate. We have till May 1st, so we get through these dog days of April. So that can take place. And I just hope and pray that people can do their best to maintain their center, maintain some compassion, but at the same time, it's also important to stay clear and focused and, unfold what's happening.
I agree.
So, and as a parent, there's a whole other layer to all of this, with a young child, which is, how do I keep my little girl safe? What does the future hold for us? And, there she is in the background. And the answer to that is, just, do your best to create as much of a supportive community around you as possible, and and then hopefully, you'll get the support and the love that you need, especially in really tough times. And I think that goes true for anybody.
That is true. You're right on that.
So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hosting this program, and I'll try to take a little more of a listen.
Okay. All right. Are you listening on the computer or via phone?
I might listen on the phone for another few minutes, and then we're going to have to cut out and do something.
All right, so then I'll put you back on hold because I think that's what you're doing, listening to on the phone. So thanks for calling in, Camille.
You're welcome.
It's our good friend Camille in Berkeley. So this is where we are right now. We're in a very precarious place, psychologically and spiritually. It's a very precarious time, and the most, I think, sensitive area that we're in is the fact that something else could happen in the next week or so, which would be not cool. Because now all of a sudden we're on to something else. Our attention's been moved again. And oh, by the way, while all this was going on, CISPA passed, and Congress essentially cleared the way for the United States to go to war against Iran. That's a whole other piece a lot of people do not have their eye on. Iran has been lurking in the background. Lurking. So we have to pay attention. It's unfortunate we have to pay attention to all this stuff. Just pay attention. I mean, it'd be nice if we could just get on and live our lives, right? It'd be nice if I could just have people on here all the time that would have healing modalities or food or creativity or things to make your life exceptional, really improve the quality of your life. Wouldn't it be great? Instead we have to be clear. We have to be, vigilant, for lack of a better term, so that we can at least somehow make sense of this and not get swept up in the tide of mass confusion and collective trance. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to play a little bit of music, and when I come back, we're going to read a few more pieces around the Boston Marathon, and then I'm going to read you something else about what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico with Corexit. It hasn't gone away. It's still there. Trust me. So why don't we play a little sounds for your mind here? How about something incredibly healing? If you want something healing, raise your hand. I got my hand up. This is Kiri Eliazon, and I believe this is the Gamarana version of the tune. From the greatest hits of the medieval era. Here we go.
On voting of our rights. Yeah, I do.
So that was Kiri Eliazon, and I've tapped into something here. Hold on a second.
Inside,
hold on. Let me just. There we go. Tapped into something here. Apparently, this is an exclusive. It's not exclusive. Apparently, Glenn Beck has come clean. Now, this is his big deal. This is just hitting the air now. It says Beck breaks exclusive information on Saudi national, once considered a person of interest in Boston bombings. Okay. So this is where Glenn Beck was going with this. Says background points. A Saudi national, originally identified as a person of interest in the Boston Marathon bombing, was set to be deported under Section 2123B, security and related grounds, terrorist activities after the bombing. As the story gained traction, the Blaze's chief contents officer, Joel Cheatwood, received word that the government may not deport the Saudi national, originally identified as Abdul Rahman Ali al-Rabi. Homeland Security Secretary Jen Napolitano refused to answer questions on the subject when confronted by Representative Jeff Duncan, Republican South Carolina, Capitol Hill. An ICE official said a different Saudi national is in custody, but is in no way connected to the bombings. A congressional source, however, says that the file on al-Arabi was created, that he was linked in some way to the Boston bombings, although it is unclear how, and that documents showing all this have been sent to Congress. Key congressmen of the Committee on Homeland Security requested a classified briefing with Napolitano. Fox News TV, Todd Starnes reports that al-Rabi was allegedly flagged on a terrorist watch list and granted a student visa without being properly vetted. Sources close to the investigation also told him that the Saudi is still set for deportation. New information provided to the Blaze reveals al-Rabi's file was altered early Wednesday evening to disassociate him from the initial charges. Sources say the Saudi student visa specifically allows him to go to school in Findlay, Ohio. He appears to have an apartment in Boston, Massachusetts. Sources tell us this will most likely now be kicked from the DHS to the DOJ and labeled an ongoing investigation. Monday morning, Glenn Beck laid out what he knows about the Saudi connection to the Boston Marathon bombings. It is a story that the mainstream media has all but completely ignored, though Beck says the Blaze's chief content officer, Joel Cheatwood, reached out to numerous networks in an effort to get the story out. So this is Glenn Beck's smoking gun. It's the Saudi national, who actually kind of looks a little bit like Zokar. It's not him, though, but it looks like him. You can go to Yahoo News, or you can go to Glenn Beck's website if you want to find out more about this. So I think what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with layers of the event. There are layers. And there was another layer, which was the white male lone wolf element. That was early. They actually had somebody, they'd picked somebody up, and they were holding him, and then he was detained. And apparently there was supposed to be some kind of connection to Al-Qaeda between the white male. Well, that fell apart. And you notice how everybody in the media very early on were barking that this was, a white male. And Wolf Blitzer was the first to get on that train. David Axelrod was also chirping that it was a white male. And then that fell apart. And the reason it fell apart was, I think, in part due to the fact that there were all these pictures of the Kraft International group, which are all white guys wearing battle fatigue khakis, black jackets, and big fat backpacks. So you had those pictures going out very early, and people getting very clear that there was something amiss here with all these guys. And so once that was out in the open, all of a sudden the pictures of Zokar and his brother, Tamerlan, popped up. And then once those pictures popped up, there was no debate. Everybody was praised and lauded for their participation and helping the authorities out to try to find these guys. So you had one scenario, that was the white, quote-unquote, male lone wolf. Then you've got the Saudi. You have the Saudi that's in there. That's another layer. And then you have the two brothers. I think there's a fourth layer as well. And I think that the fourth layer is the intelligence layer. And it's the layer that links this event, in my estimation, to the Mossad. And I'm just not going to beat around the bush about it. This has all the earmarks of a Mossad operation. So we're trying to figure it all out. We're trying to untie the knots and get clear as to what happened. Apparently, there's going to be an arms deal with the Middle East. And this is what just came across. This is Chuck Hagel. Actually, this is from yesterday. It's a Reuters piece from yesterday. Says arms deal with Middle East allies signal to Iran. They're getting people prepped for this now. This is the real elephant in the room. This is from Tel Aviv. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said on Sunday $10 billion arms deal planned with Arab and Israeli allies sent a very clear signal to Iran. This is the deal I was talking about, that military options remain on the table over its nuclear program. So $10 billion worth of arms are being shipped to the Middle East. The bottom line is that Iran is a threat, a real threat. Hagel, who arrived in Israel on Sunday on his first visit there, the defense secretary told reporters on his plane. The Iranians must be prevented from developing the capacity to build a nuclear weapon and deliver it, he said. Hagel was due to meet Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon on Monday and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday, with little progress reported at talks this month between Iran and world powers. The first stop on Hagel's week-long Middle East trip came 2 days after the Pentagon said it was finalizing a deal to strengthen the militaries of Israel and two of Iran's key rivals, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, United Arab Emirates. The deal includes the sale of KC-135 air refueling tankers. This is very important, which allows them to refuel in the air without touching down on the ground. Anti-air defense missiles and tilt-rotor V-22 Osprey troop transport planes to Israel, as well as the sale of 25 F-16 fighting Falcon jets to the UAE. The UAE and Saudi Arabia would also be allowed to purchase weapons with so-called standoff capabilities, enable them to engage an enemy with precision at a distance. Asked if the arms deal sent a message that the military option was on the table if Tehran moved to build a nuclear weapon, Hagel said, "I don't think there's any question. That's another very clear signal to Iran." So while all this was going on in Boston, lawmakers were selling billions of dollars worth of American military equipment to the Middle East. Billions of dollars. And yet the air traffic controllers are on furlough now because they can't afford to be paid, which means that with less air traffic controllers, that means that there's more potential for things to screw up in the skies and flights to be delayed. Keep your eye on that. And oh, by the way, they're talking about North Korea again. North Korea is back in the headlines, and they're moving missiles. So what do we do here? What do we do? How do we maintain our center in this time where we just keep getting, our attention keeps getting moved around and moved around and moved around? Well, I think part of what we have to do is we have to reconnect with our relationship with nature. And frankly, I need more of it in my life. So anything that you can do to stay connected to nature, I think is going to be a real plus. Because we have to stay grounded and we have to stay clear. And we can't let ourselves be moved around like a pinball on a pinball machine. So that's what's going on. In the back door is the arming of countries in the Middle East for potential war with Iran. Now, we still have a week. This is the 22nd. We have up until May 1st, basically from April 12th, 15th, all the way up through the 1st of May, Walpurgisnacht. This is the most intense time in terms of this type of activity. You can just go date by date by date by date by date, all the way through the calendar. You can find everything from the sinking of the Titanic to the death of Lincoln, and it's all in here. Waco, Boston now, all these events are Columbine. They're all in this continuum, and the continuum ends on May 1st. So hopefully, with the arrival of this Taurus energy, which is a lot more peaceful, we can cool down some of the heat on the Aries equation. You know, the stellium, which has been going literally from sign to sign to sign, it's breaking up just a little bit. But we saw it with all the planets in Pisces, for weeks. It was just like Pisces, Pisces, Pisces. And then it flipped to Aries, and it got very intense with the stellium in Aries. And now we're getting into the Taurus zone. Now, here's the challenge. This is what happens in terms of just astrology and life sciences, geosciences. When you have a volcano, it's a very Aries-like experience, right? The volcano erupts. There's fire. There's lava. There's destruction. There's chaos. And then what happens? Well, then it cools, and that's Taurus. So we have the solidification of the chaos, or the solidification of the heat and the magma. And what will happen during the Taurus period, although we may not have as much intensity, we will certainly have the cooling, the congealing, and the materialization process, which means there could be new laws, there could be new things related to security, because what does Taurus represent? Taurus represents the second house, it represents the root chakra, it represents values, and it's a fixed sign. So once something happens during the sign of Taurus, then it's almost like it's cauterized or sealed. So what we need to be aware of is, now that this has taken place, the cooling and the congealing process is related to the process where it becomes some form of rule or regulation or law to help us feel safer and more secure. That's a very Taurus kind of thing. So keep your eyes on that. Then we go from, we're also going to have an eclipse here on the 25th. It's a big eclipse. It's a significant eclipse. And then we go from the eclipse into Taurus proper. We're there now, but even more Taurus, to the end of the month, where we get into the first of the major two squares between Uranus and Pluto. But the other thing that we'll be moving into, and you've got to keep your eye on this, is when Mars moves into Gemini. When Mars moves into Gemini, that is potentially a very serious time. Because every time we turn around and look, there's this Gemini factor that's in play, the duality. Like today, with the birthday of Adam Lanza and Dzhokhar Sariev. Here we have the Gemini effect in place. The brothers. One wears a white hat, one wears a black hat. And then you have the dual scenarios taking place as well. Here's one scenario, and here's another scenario, probably more than one. There's duality all over the place here. The fire at the JFK library. JFK is a Gemini. And it goes on and on and on and on. And if you look at the birthday, it's 22, right? 22, mirror images of 2. So when Mars moves into Gemini, I think that's a potentially very volatile time. Extremely volatile. Frankly, I'll be glad when Jupiter moves out of Gemini. I really will. I'll be thrilled, because Jupiter is in its detriment when it's in Gemini. And when it moves into Cancer, it's a nice place for Jupiter. And hopefully we can all get along and be much more resonant and nurturing and loving with one another, in hope that that energy is not hijacked for some fake form of patriotism. Oh man, I'm all about this country. Don't get me wrong, I love this country. It's a great country. I just have a hard time when it's hijacked and manipulated to play off people's emotions, and to get them to buy into something that is completely and utterly contrary to their own well-being and best interests. All right, I was hoping that I could do a show for 2 hours today, but I'm not sure I have the juice. My biorhythms are kind of low. I'm at the trough biorhythmically. So I'll soldier on here for a few more minutes, unless you want to call in, and unless you want to talk about this event that is taking place. I wanted to also talk about core exit. There's stuff coming out now around core exit and what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico. And somebody wants to talk. So let's bring them on. Let's hear what they have to say, and then maybe I'll get back into the core exit piece. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Robert. This is the gardener in Idaho, and I was wanting to know, you never did say, when does Mars go into Gemini?
Well, let's find that out all together, shall we? I believe Mars just went into Taurus. So Mars is about a 6-week cycle. So I'm thinking that it's 6 weeks out from today. So what would that be? Today is the 22nd. Without even looking, I'm going to go the 22nd of May, June, and then another 2 weeks, 14 days. June. I'm going to say July.
1st of July?
Yeah, let's just look at that. Hold on. Let's see what we got here. So we're going to 2013, 1st of July, July, Mars. I'm sorry, 1st of June. 1st of June.
Oh.
So Mars goes into Gemini June 1st. At that time, Venus and Jupiter will both be conjunct in Gemini, and the Sun will also be in Gemini. That's the most Gemini. Oh, and the Black Moon Lilith will also be at 29 degrees Gemini. So that's the most Gemini activity. It's going to be right then. And oh, by the way, that is when the big square takes place.
Oh.
Between Pluto and Uranus. The closest that Pluto and Uranus really come off together, it's actually a little bit earlier. It's going to be the closest degree-wise to the Pluto-Uranus square, is the 21st at 0 degrees Gemini.
Okay, do you have anything outrageous that you see with this full moon this Thursday?
Well, let's look at it here. Let's see, what do we got? Well, okay, so I have to look at the degree. It looks like it's right on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio. The Sun on Thursday is at 4 degrees Scorpio. The day starts off with the Moon in Libra and then moves into Scorpio later. So, I mean, the thing that you deal with the opposition, that's a fixed opposition. It's a very intense opposition. The thing I like about the degree for the Sun on that day is that it's at the 3rd degree. Hold on, it's at the 4th degree. It's at the 4th degree of Taurus, and it's actually on the Sabian symbols. It's called a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Oh wow!
So that's actually kind of an interesting degree for.
Yeah, kind of like a resolution degree.
It could be. I mean, so the most exalted, from my research, the most exalted degree of any planet in any sign throughout the entire zodiac is supposedly 3 degrees Taurus moon. And the reason why is because the third degree of the Taurus moon is related in the sky to Aldebaran. And Aldebaran is it's called the bullseye. It's in the constellation Taurus. And so the third degree Taurus moon is considered the bullseye.
And is that what we're having with this full moon, or is it just close enough? It'll be passing through that day.
But it would be on the solar tip. It wouldn't be on the lunar angle. The lunar angle, you'd have to go to the new moon, or you'd have to go to
that's right,
or the full moon in November. So,
well, I remember this when I got married 11 years ago. It was on the 27th of April, and it was a full moon then. And it was the Taurus-Scorpio axis, which I've always heard is one of the most deadliest or most violent full moons, is the Taurus-Scorpio, Scorpio-Taurus axis. And that was when they had that big weird shootout in Laughlin, which is where we were headed.
Well, in all deference and respect to people listening and clients who have the Scorpio moon is a pretty heavy moon. And, once a person masters the Scorpio moon, they have an incredible amount of emotional self-control, and they can be really powerful in terms of holding space for people and channeling trauma, and it's a lot of psychic responsibility to deal with.
Power, yes.
It is a lot of power, and the people that I've had in my life that have been lovers with Scorpio moons, they're off the charts. I mean, these people channel significant amounts of chi. Trust me, they do. And but the challenge with the Scorpio moon is the possessiveness.
Right. The jealousy.
It's the jealousy, and the reason why is because they feel so intensely. And if they feel pleasure and ecstasy and closeness at such an intense level, they don't want anybody else to feel that, or they don't want that to get away, right? I mean, that's really
to get away, yes.
That's the bottom line.
Must control it. I've had several important people in my life with Scorpio moons, and a lot of people in my family have it. And I have a Libra moon, so kind of, frightens me. But and Venus in Scorpio as well. And that makes for a very controlling. It can be a very controlling partnership or partner.
So
Scorpio. Okay, yeah, I'm loving keeping up with you on Facebook. I'm sorry about your friend in Berkeley's reaction, but that's what I personally experienced to the degree that I noticed it. It's gangs upon the one, in which they now call these people sovereigns, like that's a bad thing. And a sovereign person is now like a ominous flag to be labeled with. And yet, that's what everyone, I think, should achieve to become. And it is the gangs against the solitary. And that's a dangerous place to be in. So then you feel compelled to either find a gang, or which doesn't seem to work when you're a sovereign person. So yeah, this is like. And I don't know if it might be Jupiterian, not necessarily Gemini, Jupiter, but the gangs, the many against the one. And that might be Jupiter's impact. I don't know, but I have definitely noticed that the last, 10 years or so.
It's really been dialed up, with...
Right. Yeah, it's really escalated to the point, that sovereigns and throwing the citizen in is an oxymoron or a opposite or something. But being a sovereign person is now, like you're a threat.
Yeah,
and
what they're doing, Gardner, is they're framing everything so that if you have a contrarian point of view, literally if you don't go along with the program, then you are considered a threat, whatever the program is. Okay?
Right.
So if you don't want, I just read this the other night. I read this last night. This was in upstate New York, and I think it was Schenectady, maybe. I'm gonna throw it out there. I think it's Schenectady, but it's upstate New York, and there were two women who were at a middle school, and they were doing a same-sex awareness seminar at this middle school. This is a it's a public school, and part of the exercise for their same-sex awareness, this was with all girls, is that the girls that were in the room, they were told to kiss another girl in the room so that they could get over their fear of same-sex relating.
Oh.
And, I mean, look, I have nothing against women kissing each other. I have a problem with schools bringing people in to encourage this. Now, if I have a problem with that, I'm sure there are going to be other people that have a problem with that. Well, guess what? Too bad, because the superintendent of that school said not only does he, or that school district, not only does he think that it was a worthwhile program, but they're going to have more. And forget about it. If you don't like it, there's a problem now. This is what's happening. This is how things are being set up. If you don't like something,
even though showing affection like that with one another is more than likely against their own school rules. To get it, a little more complicated.
Rules are. All I know is that what we're seeing is that if you do not agree with whatever the consensus reality is, the dominant paradigm program, whatever that thing, if you don't agree, whatever it is, then you will be classified as some form of contrarian or dissident. I mean, the thing that used to make this country really a powerful place was that people could disagree. They could do it openly. They could do it, respectfully. Debate was fostered. One of the things you learned in school was how to debate. It was, you go on the debate team. You learn the rules for debate. Critical thinking. All that's going away now. It's all going away.
Right. It's being indoctrinated to be totalitarian. That you must follow orders. That you must obey.
Right. Absolutely. That's how everything's being framed. And what's interesting too is, if you look at the profile of Dzhokhar Sariev, he was looked at as being like a really good kid. A really good kid. Neighbors spoke highly of him. He had a good heart. He was called the class clown. Went to parties. He loved wrestling. He was a good wrestler. He was just a kid that was trying to find his way, in America.
Well, and a great student.
Yeah. And then you have these people on CNN who are, say, well, anybody can turn on a dime at any given moment.
Right. Well, there was also, they put out that their mother had been arrested for shoplifting, and the comments on that one were pretty primitive.
Yeah, I think a lot of the boards on major websites are being trolled. So, but then you also have people having these Neanderthal kind of reactions as well.
Right. Well, this is like all of the ones. One of the few that I kept up with was the Fort Hood shootings, and that story spun, I think, 6 different times within one 8-hour day. Of who the perps were, how many they were. The entire story washed like 6 times, and by the end of the day, they had that man, that supposed psychiatrist major, in his Middle Eastern garb on videotape and video of his apartment. And they had him nailed. And that was like 3 years ago now, and they still haven't, and then he was dead, and then he was in a coma, and then they had so many spins on that one. And that one's always left out of the loop of the strange media encounters we've had. But the Fort Hood was also a very, very outrageous. It's actually been the most outrageous one I've experienced, with how many times the story spun on an Army base, of all places.
Yeah. So that was the therapy. He was actually a psychotherapist and researcher who supposedly went rogue on the base. Right. He was working with trauma victims coming back from the war. He was working with soldiers, right? And he'd gone to advise the young kids or something on the base, and that were getting ready to deploy. And at first it started out that it was like 3 soldiers, and then it totally flipped and spun and went through the rinse and spin cycle 6 different times before they quickly pinned it on him. And he was another one that had a very vague history, or kind of an anonymous life for what he had accomplished, and very anti-Muslim. Even though he himself was Muslim, though. I mean, he was Arabic, right?
I don't really remember now, but to the Americans, it was just another Muslim, American-hating Muslim.
Right.
And
he was from the Middle East initially.
Right.
I think he might have been Iraqi. I'm not completely sure about that.
Right. Well, and and that was such an outrageous story, and then it even ended with outsiders, civilians off base coming in and heroically, ending the murder and stuff, which would never happen on a normal military installation. That civilian cops come into the base and do anything.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I thought that was so preposterous, the whole thing. It was wide-eyed, giddy time for me, and yet, that went down the poop chute. That was 3 years ago. I don't think. I think it might be coming up for his trial or something. But here's another case that's very, very long waited. And where has this man been, and what's gone on with him, that it's been 3 years since this happened?
Okay, so I got the lowdown. I've been playing with the ephemeris here, and I've got the lowdown on the lunar eclipse coming up. If you are keeping score at home, the lunar eclipse takes place, so we're talking the exact opposite of the sun by degree, and the closest I could get it is at 5 Scorpio. So 5 Scorpio opposing Sun at 5 Taurus. At that time, Mercury's in Aries, Venus is in Taurus, Mars is in Taurus. So there's a Moon-Mars opposition, which is quite violent, to be honest with you. And then there's a Saturn-Moon conjunction. It's a 3-degree orb, and that takes place. And all those planets, well, when I say all those planets, I'm talking specifically the Scorpio planets. Which house are they hanging out in at the time of the eclipse? They're hanging out in the 3rd house, which is the house of Gemini. So that's what it looks like. Let's look at the Sabian symbol for 5 degrees, 6 degrees. Let's just see if we can get any clue on that. Sabian symbol, Dane Rudyard. Let's just do this, and then we can maybe glimpse some of the. By the way, there's a great somebody, whoever did this, on mindfire.ca. They put all the Sabian symbols up with all the definitions.
Oh, wow.
Put together by Rudyard. So if you ever want to reference it, just type in Sabian symbol Dane Rudyard and go to the Angel Fire site. Thank you. whoever did this. It's a great job. So we go to we look at 5 to 6 Scorpio. So there are two interesting. So at 5 Scorpio, it is a massive rocky shore resists the pounding of the sea. The keynote is the inertia of institutionalized procedures. Slow is the rise of the land from the vast ocean. This is really funny. I was just talking about this, right, with Aries and volcanism and magma.
Right. Yeah, that was wonderful too.
Well, so this is exactly what this symbol represents. It says, slow is the rise of the land from the vast ocean. But once it is formed, it develops a formidable resistance to change in spite of storms. Likewise, once a culture has expressed its basic symbols and its particular way of thinking, feeling, and acting in concrete institutions, these change very slowly. The individual who came to the great city soon finds his life set by the rhythms of city living, which obliterate vaster life processes and the moving tides of evolution. This is the last of the 5 symbols of the 43rd sequence. We see in it how binding and resistant a communal way of life can become. In this,
you were just talking about that too.
Yeah, in this
affiliations.
And these are necessary factors in the social life of man until new horizons beckon. The key word is stability. Now, in Sabian symbols, we always go to the next week. The way that Linda Hill, who I bow to as the foremost authority at this point,
right,
respect authority on Sabian symbols, and I've communicated, because I've written about Sabian symbols happening exactly on the symbol, and people always say, oh no, you've got to round up to the next one. Well, you do, but Linda has said that there are 3 phases to the symbol. It's the symbol before, the symbol during, and then the symbol after.
Right.
So, they tell a story. So here at 5, we go to 6, and it is, this is the second level emotional/cultural phase 216, Scorpio 6, the gold rush tears men away from their native soil. Keynote, the passionate search for new values, which at any level promise a more abundant life. The greatness of man is that he can always be greater. Likewise, at a national level, man's greed can more easily be aroused by whatever promises more wealth, more power, and ever greater achievements at all levels, spiritual as well as material. Beyond this arousal of greed is the deep-seated desire to play a more important or spectacular role in one's society or community. Greed is the perverse intensification of the social sense, just as lust is the perverse intensification of the longing for love. Always at this Scorpio level, the yearning is for an ever more intense and self-absorbing union with a person or community, a yearning which motivates a search for more effectual means to achieve as total a feeling experience as possible. So this is what we're talking about earlier with the Scorpio moon, right?
Right.
The yearning for an ever more intense and all-absorbing union. This is the first stage of the 44th sequence of symbolic phases in the cycle of existence. It dramatizes the capacity in man to tear himself away from the unknown and the familiar, gambling everything on a vision or dream. A key word could be avidity. So here we have, at the 6th degree, the most intense and passionate and in some ways reckless degree of Scorpio as it relates to the eclipse.
What was the key word again?
Avidity.
Avidity?
Avidity. Avidity.
Oh.
And if you don't know what avidity means,
like being avid?
Well, we're going to. I'm assuming it has a relation to it. Wikipedia defines avidity. Avidity is, in proteins, avidity is the combined strength of multiple bond interactions. Avidity is distinct from affinity, which is the strength of a single bond. As such, avidity is the combined synergistic strength of bond affinities rather than the sum of the bonds. if clustered proteins form a matrix, such as a clathrin coat, the interaction is matricity. Matricity. So this is interesting. Avidity is in some ways the opposite of synergy. That it is multiplicity, but each of the multiple bonds has its own distinct identity. Whereas with affinity, they all come together. It's an interesting concept. Yeah.
Has total pertinence to my situation for Thursday, and it's also my son's Venus at 5 degrees in Scorpio.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's very telling. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Looks like we got a caller here from Austin. So why don't I take this call and wish you well, partner, okay?
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that's our friend the gardener. Let's go to Austin, Texas, where I am currently talking to you from. Thanks for calling.
Hey, this is Dave. How's it going?
What's going on, Big D?
Well, it's been a while since I got a reading. Would that be possible?
Oh, man. It would be. Dave, you're a special case.
Okay.
So here's what I suggest you and I do.
All right.
I suggest you and I do this together socially.
Okay.
Because it just seems silly for me to do a reading for you on the. I mean, I can do it, but it just kind of goes.
You know more about this than me, man. I thought I might be sharing in some way to help others, but
it goes against the grain because I just want to be able to connect with you and do it. And I also get where you're coming from with the call too.
So I do have a quick question.
Sure.
How do you feel about the Glenn Beck interaction?
I think it's bogus. That's what I think. I think Glenn Beck is as much as I'd like to believe that he has our best interests at heart. I don't think that that's the case. I think he's leading people down another cul-de-sac and trying to create some form of yet another distraction. That's what I think.
So where we're at in all this, in regards to Terence McKenna's type stuff, where's the balance of the good and evil? Isn't there supposed to be one?
Yeah, sure.
Where is it?
Well, I think that you're participating in it right now.
Okay.
I mean, so where's the good? The good, I mean, I think the good around this is that people are waking up. Here's, and I get where you're coming from, right? I get where you're coming from. I think that we're in a collective awakening, and it's not a graceful process. There's a birth going on here. And birth is messy. Sometimes it's breech. Sometimes, like when my son was being born, he was born sideways. I had to twist him around, use some forceps and a vacuum, to bring him into this world. I mean, but we're in a birthing process, and birth is the most precarious. That when you go through that canal, man, I mean, it's the most precarious and vulnerable time of the gestation period as it culminates. And that's where we are right now. And I think that part of the birthing is this awakening. We're becoming conscious of the manipulation of reality. And that awakening is really exciting, because I think if we can get past a lot of the fear and a lot of the dividing and conquering, the separation, and I think this is why you called in, we have the opportunity to do some amazing things in this world. We really do. But I
go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I just think that the awakening process is vital. Can you be conscious without being awake? I mean, that's a really interesting question.
Well, the reason I asked the question, because I'm sincere in asking it, not like facetious, but I'm having an experience where, I've had some challenges in my life, and it seems as if I feel pretty mellow. I feel pretty calm. But in that place of where I'm really coming into, I also feel this nothingness. It's like all we've seen is all the crap in this planet here. I mean, where's the peace and where's the love? Of course, we take our children to a baseball game, but we know in a baseball game they're still raping and pillaging us when we go back into our house or to our job. So, as this falls away, it's a bit of a strange feeling, and I just wanted to share that with you. And all is well, and it's just a very uncanny feeling that I'm sensing. My senses have heightened. I can feel the barometric. I don't know how to say the word at the moment. I can feel the temperature changes. I can feel how the wind changes. At about 5 o'clock in the morning every night, it feels like the air is sucking me for about 15 minutes. And this has gone on for about a week. Mm-hmm. It's very strange. I don't know if others are feeling this stuff or what.
Well, I think you bring up some really interesting points. I mean, for me, I have more energy than I've had. Even though I'm a little tired at times because I'm going to stay up late, my energy's been off the charts for the last 3 weeks. I feel very engaged. I feel very alive. I feel very in the moment. And that doesn't detract from the challenges that I have going on in my life. And in fact, it actually helps me deal with them, to be honest with you. So I'm with you, and I don't want to make this sound like all I talk about is the negative shit in my life or the world. Because really I don't, and I feel actually quite optimistic most of the time. It gets challenging for me when I go through a situation where, somebody was a part of my life and my kid's life, a very formative part of my kid's life for, 5 years, and then there's this fork in the road,
Well, I don't want to take up much of your call, but I appreciate you, and I'm not calling to make you look over here or over there. I'm just having this experience of saying, okay, when I'm done looking at this masquerade that's before me of terror and evil and torture, what else do I look at? And
right.
Sometimes I get it, and a lot of times I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I'm just sharing that with you because I think we're either having it or we're going to have this experience. And when we get through that, then we'll be at this new place we're headed to. But right now it feels kind of shaky going into a nothingness. Well, anyway, blessings, my friend.
No, you bring up a really good point. Do you have to go, or do you want to listen to what I want to share?
I want to listen.
Okay. So I have a good friend and a client, and both of them have, just in the last week or so, they've come to similar places. And the places that they have come to is that they're okay with dying. And when I say that, I'm not saying that they are okay with the fact that they have some terminal disease or something, but they have looked at their lives, they've looked at life in general, and they say, well, really, what's it about? What more is there? I'm at a place right now where I don't even really want to try anymore. Trying leads to, yet another form of striving, which is another form of ego, which is another form of illusion. So both people have come to this place from two separate angles all the way across the country. I've had dialogues with them about this. And it's like, well, after you realize that the human endeavor in some ways is nothing more than kind of two insects dancing, mating, writhing, and dying on a much larger playing field, then what? Then what? If you step back and say this is all bullshit and this is all an illusion, and any kind of striving is immaterial, then what? What do you live for? Where do you go from there? How do you assign value to your life? I mean, I think that this is a place where a lot of us are going now. Why? Because the material dream is dying. whether it's because of the economy or the jobs going away, it's dying. So this whole idea that we're going to make $200,000 a year, we're going to be able to get away on 3 vacations, we're going to be able to have a 401k, we're going to pass down generational wealth, we're going to have somebody that thinks we're a much more attractive mate because we can provide for them. That's all going away. That reality is going away. So then what? Well, it's like, okay, well, I have a purpose. What am I here to do? Well, I'm here to do this. 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 And hopefully, that replaces the value-driven life or the material-driven life with a purpose-driven life. But even then, like I found my purpose, I think, and there are times like, well, now what? Where do I go from here? And I think even there's beyond that. And then after that, it's like, well, now what? Now where do you go? It's like, okay, well, you've seen the futility of it all. You've seen the nothingness. There's kind of a nihilistic sort of relationship. And I had this conversation with Don Miguel. I've had it. And you know what he said? He said, well, after that, you realize that you can be creative, that you can be imaginative, and that you can have a different relationship with the material universe. It's a choice at that point. And I think that's really what it comes down to. That was his choice. That's how he framed it. Everybody else frames it a little differently. And then it's like, well, what are you here for now? What do you want to do? What's important to you? And I think that's where we all have to go, regardless of, what dream you've had and held and shattered or has faded and gone away. And
am I still online?
That's a very personal choice for each of us.
Am I still online?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's exactly the thought I had this morning. And it's not a morbid. When I hear you say it, it sounds different than me feeling it. But no, I just had that thought, well, I may as well, what if they did bomb America and blew the whole thing up? It's like, I really don't care. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I can't stop it. Right. So why do I concern myself with the thought of it is what I think. So I'm right there. I don't have any, the fear is, I don't really care about this stuff. And with my job, I have a sales job, and I realize that today I'm realizing, hey, I'm going to set the phone down and quit calling because today's not working. And so I sat there for 2 hours having this battle with myself. Well, I need to push. And it's like, I do more work in 10 minutes than I do sometimes in 2 or 3 weeks by stopping. Right. So it's happening. I'm excited. I love you, and I love your show.
Well, thanks, Dave. I love you too. And let's get together sometime, and I'll do a full reading if that means something to you.
Well, yeah, I just thought, I'm wondering kind of what this experience is. I've never really gotten to deal with the understanding, and this might help others, the understanding of how this astrology actually plays out in my life. But something's changed. I'm wondering if something out there has actually changed for me. So, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. It'd be a good excuse to get together, too.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Hey, you take care, okay? I mean it.
Yes, you too.
I'll see you around. That's Dave, my buddy here in Austin. I understand where he's coming from. I get it. And I think what we're doing here is we're having to redefine what is meaningful for us. And I totally understand where Dave is coming from, too. There is a beauty in a redemptive nihilism. This is what the existentialists went through, by the way. When the existentialists played out all the scenarios, what were they left with? They were left with nothingness. That's all nothing. And here's where you have the really interesting convergence of like the nihilists, the Zen Buddhists. They come to this point where there's no meaning at all. And then everything after that is what you assign to it. That's what it's about. It's whatever you assign to it. Now, of the existentialists, Kierkegaard is probably the most interesting because Kierkegaard gets into the void, the nothingness of the void, as a point of redemption. That when we are completely emptied of everything, that's when the miracle of life begins to manifest in our lives. And for Kierkegaard, that miracle was God in the universe. So, yes, I think it's important to realize everything that Dave just shared with us. And it's important to also realize that people are here for different things at different times. And I used to have this debate with a friend of mine who I've talked about many times. He was a summa cum laude, University of Werner Erhard. And he was all about just having things positive. He had no room in his life for any negative thinking. And if there was something negative, he had everything in his power to turn it around and positive. You know what? He's a pretty happy guy. He's got a pretty fulfilling life. So I could probably actually learn something from him. But he used to get down on me because he would say, "Why do you spend so much time on this stuff?" And I would say, "Look, man, you know, it's a church. It's a cathedral from the Middle Ages, and some people are, you know, chipping out gargoyles, and other people are cutting stained glass." So you just got to figure out where you are in the building of the church, the erecting of the cathedral across time and space. I think it changes too. I think we change along the way. You know, for some people, their mission is over. I had a client recently, super enlightened guy. And I was thrilled that this guy asked me to do his reading for him. Super enlightened guy. And he said, "I'm done here. I'm done." He had an issue with his kids and an ex-wife. And he said, "The only reason I'm here now is for them." That's it. He was clear. It's the only reason I'm here now is for them. So we all have our reasons. And to be honest with you, I determined that my reason is you. And that's why I'm here. And I'm here because I want to assist as many people as I can in my own way, whether it's through working with them with their charts, their interpersonal issues, or whether it's the big picture stuff. It's why I'm here. It's why I've always been here. And that, for me, defines my meaning. That's it. That my kid and this cat on my lap. So you have to be able to figure out and distill your own frame of reference, your own point of view after the illusions have collapsed and what you're left with. And at that point, then you can create something that's unique and perhaps something you're not terribly attached to. However, at the same time, you are interested in and magnetized towards because there's some other thing pulling you versus achievement and aspiration. Okay, well, I don't think I have a lot more to add today. We've covered some interesting topics and covered some interesting ground. Pretty diverse. I really want to thank B and Dave and the Gardner calling in and asking questions and offering their perspective. And I think even though we are really living in turgid times, there is the potential for redemption, and there is the potential for reconciliation, and there is the potential for breaking down structures that keep us separate. And you have the option and the opportunity to do it. And there perhaps may not be a greater and more important time to achieve those ends. So with that, I leave you with the mantra of the show, which is use your head to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Monday Mashup, an extended version looking at the Boston Marathon event and more. I'll be back on Wednesday with Navigating the Astrological Matrix, 2 hours worth of looking into the eclipse and all kinds of other goodies. In fact, it'll be the day before the eclipse. We'll be meeting right here and talking about it. The eclipse, by the way, is only partial, and it's skimming the bottom part of the Earth, which means it's going past Antarctica, which is interesting in and of itself. So we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. And on Friday, cross your fingers. Hopefully a guest. I'm trying to get Freeman on the show. They're doing a lot of work right now trying to promote Weird Stuff, their book, their trilogy, their three-part trilogy. They're going to come out with 9 editions of Weird Stuff. They're on volume number 1, so I'm hoping to get Freeman on. If I don't have Freeman on, I'm still sitting on an interview that I did with Darren last week about the Queen of England, which is definitely worth listening to, and hopefully it'll still be timely by then. Okay, that's it. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Monday Mashup, and we'll see everybody on Wednesday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.